Senses, a three-part podcast on how disability affects people's senses. This episode of Senses focuses on sight. For many, getting to and from work or school is easy. But imagine being in the centre of a town, unable to use your eyes. Your sense of direction is gone, and without a guide, you do not know your way. For 1 in 30 people, this is a reality, and they have to adapt to continue with their everyday life. Many of those who are blind or partially sighted use a cane. Some may have a guide dog. We spoke to Ben, a visually impaired student at the University of Lincoln.
I'm a second year level 2 history student, and I live in the West End area of Lincoln.
So, when did you become partially sighted, or was it from birth?
When I was 3 years old, it was a brain tumour around the optic nerve.
So, how close to an object do you have to be able to see it?
Well, it depends on the size. They say what I can see from 3 metres, most people see from 60 metres though.
But finding new places on your own can be a challenge. Ben explains that people aren't always willing to help.
If I was asked to find a new room, I wouldn't probably be able to do that. Or if I needed to get all the way from the library over to here in MHT, I would probably need a student maybe to help me, or a member of staff that was maybe passing by. That wasn't necessarily my support worker.
Thankfully, there is now technology and support out there for the visually impaired, like the Lincoln and Lindsay Blind Society, who've been serving the visually impaired community since 1921.
We're a registered charity. We work with people with sight impairment. Some of my colleagues will work with children. Majority of us work with adults over 18. We cover the whole of Lincolnshire.
Yeah, I work with children. We work with people who don't just have vision impairments. They often have multiple sensory disabilities, and also they may have life-limiting illnesses, may be very elderly, might be people who are confined to their house. We also, because people come in different forms, if you like, so just because you've got an eye problem or disability doesn't mean to say that you haven't got cancer, you haven't got cerebral palsy or learning disability. So people come to us with a whole range of, if you like, health, mobility, disability, problems, difficulties, challenges, that's a good word.
And we often work with people long term. I'm a volunteer coordinator, so if clients want to become part of the befriending service, we look for volunteers and we train our volunteers, match those with clients who want friendship or to be able to go out, which they can't do on their own, and we run social groups with people that want to come along as well.
Although there's help for the older generations, it can be argued there isn't enough support in higher education for visually impaired students.
There's a support agency called Clear Links that provides somebody to help, for sighted guide to help me around the campus safely, but that's only the times when I'm in lectures and seminars. To say on a Wednesday when I don't have lectures or anything, they don't have that support, so I have to just ask random students to try and help me or whatever. And some obviously ignore me and some try and help. It depends on, I guess, their attitude, or if they're maybe in a rush themselves. But at the moment it's 5 hours a week for library support, so to try and find any resources, then any articles to convert them into the right format for me, because some of them are very difficult, or to read any, or rather describe any visual images on PowerPoints, or if we've been asked to look at some photographs or newspapers, article snippets, then obviously I get help describing those or reading the text if it's not convertible into a Word document. But I use Arial size 36 in bold, so that's about 4 to 5 times the average size font, and it can take sometimes 8 or 10 pages or more pages. So a 20-page article has been over 200 pages before.
The Lincoln and Lindsay Blind Society agree with Ben, who expresses that there could be improved support in colleges and universities.
I think there might be a gap as children get older and they're not classed as young people anymore, over the age of 24, I think, is it now?
25.
Yeah, 25 and above. I've got a young lady that fits into that category that wanted to go to college, but she found it very difficult because the college couldn't provide a guide for her to get around. So we had to sort of work with that and find her somewhere she could go that was accessible for her. So I think there's a gap there where people fall out of being
they're not staying
children.
anymore.
Yeah.
No, to agree. And that's when a lot of them flounder actually. That's a lot of them when they'll stay at home, they'll become more reclusive at that point because there's no one helping them out there. If they've been through the education system, they've had one-to-one help all the time, and all of a sudden you're not getting that help anymore. What am I supposed to do now? A lot of them can't work, don't work. As they do become more socially isolated from friends, they don't have the freedom of will to be able to walk out the door like everybody else. Everything has to be planned, and they have to usually have an escort with them. And the journey they don't know.
Although the university goes some way in providing support, Ben does think that it could go further in assisting disabled students.
More printing, as I say, obviously maybe not exclusive or total help, but equally more than what they do. So as I say, maybe if it's £15 a semester, something like 60 or something would be more sensible, because obviously that equates to the fact it's 4 or 5 times more bulky at the very, very minimum.
While support for blind people traditionally comes from guides, there have been huge developments in assistive technology, allowing blind or partially sighted people a lot more support without relying on others.
Yeah, I mean, like for example, some of the screens we've got in here, they will magnify print probably up to about 60 times or more. So your print can be really large. They're machines that you can actually write underneath, so they could actually see their own writing. There's machines that will actually read paper. They will read books to you. It's like a camera that comes over the top, photographs the page, and will actually read the information. There's assistive technology on all your computers now to read, and your iPads, and
apps on phones and all sorts.
Yeah, I mean the information is now at a blind person's fingertips.
And even if you're a brailler, for example, teachers can now have equipment which converts braille into written words, so teachers can then mark work and read it, and then it can be converted back into braille so that the person can then pick up the teacher's comments.
However, Ben says that the university is worried about costs in providing assistive technology, such as printing in braille.
University don't like giving me stuff in braille. Apparently it costs too much, and apparently it takes a while to process, but then they just prefer me to use stuff electronically or in print. But obviously print's a bit of a strain on my eyes, and I don't really like strain on my eyes.
Oh, did it take you a while to learn how to read braille?
There's 2 different grades. There's grade 1, that took me 9 months, and that's the basic alphabet and numbers. But then grade 2 took me about 2 years, and that's the abbreviations. So the letter L, for an example, spaced out is like, or R is rather, and stuff like that. And so it's a principle of contractions. Then there's full words that you can do with 3 symbols. So an ST sign, a colon, and an N means station. And so those things try and contract and simplify the braille so it takes up less room than it ordinarily would. The point of that is, well, it still takes up a lot of room, and obviously, so one book, even in grade 2 level, can take anything from 10 to 18 volumes depending on the size of it, so it's kind of a lot.
Ben struggles with getting around and needs assistance when doing everyday things, such as going to the shops or typing emails. He describes what an average day is like for him.
Well, I can handle basic personal care myself, so I can do things like breakfast, because that's just, cold cereal or cold drink like milk or orange juice. I can get dressed myself, I can get washed myself, but then I have to get a taxi into university. And so that's funded by student finance, fortunately. If not, my attendance wouldn't be very good at the moment. But the taxi helps me attend uni. Then obviously on the days I'm in uni, the support worker meets me from the taxi and helps me around the campus and the lectures. I record all the lectures in seminars.
not even historically accurate. But what if
I participate effectively, although sometimes some of the peers are not very enthusiastic or don't seem to engage with any of my ideas. Maybe they don't know how to cope with disabilities. I'm not 100% sure. And then obviously they help me back into a taxi at the end of the day. I go home. A different care company helps me cook an evening meal, because obviously that's more dangerous with hobs, hot water maybe, or ovens. And then obviously I do my reading independently based on the stuff that's been formatted within the library. I get through that, and then obviously I can do the end of the day personal care myself. But I do find that my socialisation is a bit more challenging, and maybe I need help with that, I guess. Because of my disability, I find it hard to obviously get out there, and there's not really enough funding that I've been made aware of to help me participate in social activities. So my day's sometimes a bit boring and a bit sad.
The need for social activities and interaction is important for those with disabilities, as they often struggle socially. The Lincoln and Lindsay Blind Society organise activities for their members, as many have to deal with loneliness.
I think the youngest client that I've worked lengthy with is a 20-year-old, and we helped him through registration and identifying needs, and trying to get him involved in social activities. And I think again that's where Lisa's talking about the volunteer side. I mean, the younger people tend to sort of get involved in things like the goal ball and the 10-pin bowling. There is 10-pin bowling, blind league, the archery as well, so they quite like things like that.
Trampolining.
Well, I suppose if you look at yourself and you think I'm a blind person and I would like to be involved in a blind community, then that's one of the ways that you can do that, and you can help to shape services in the future. Social inclusion, research shows us that it helps to make people well and healthy and reduces the amount of mental health problems, but it's down to the individual and what they want. I mean, I could sit here and talk at length about what people should or shouldn't have, but I'm not visually impaired, so it's about what those individuals feel they want, what influence they want to take, or whether they choose to say, well, actually, I'm going to live my life and I'm not going to be involved in that community.
Not everybody wants to be.
No.
And from the other side of it, though, people can find it quite hard to find, when you've got visual impairment, particularly if you're completely blind, severely sight impaired, to actually engage in things is quite difficult. And us as a charity do try and promote things for people and engage people in things and make people aware and share information, or else, it can be quite an isolating place to be a young person and blind.
Social Pause is a group of guide dog owners who meet monthly to chat and take part in activities. We spoke to Di Vaughan, one of the founders of the group, as well as her guide dog Bridie, who was tearing the post apart at the time, on how guide dogs function not only as a guide, but as a social companion.
Yeah, primarily it is getting together. People getting out and socialising with friends in the same position as themselves. And obviously, you're quite welcome at those meetings, those informal meetings, to talk about, perhaps somebody's got a new dog, and they're sort of saying, I've had this problem with my dog, is that normal? Has anybody else had it, So you're quite welcome to raise any issues like that at all. So we meet monthly to do that, but then as I say, in between times we try and arrange activities for ourselves. We went gliding once, guided tour of the Guildhall, we do walks.
Di explains that Social Pause allows the blind to lead the blind, in a sense, as the members organise their own activities.
But also we were doing things for ourselves. So whilst we sort of felt things like Lincoln and Lindsay Blind Society and other groups, yes, they've got their place, but very often the people on the management committees are normally sighted people organising things for you. So this was us doing things for ourselves, really, a bit of a self-help group, I suppose.
The Lincoln and Lindsay Society say that it is a person's choice to engage with groups, as they can't force people to go, despite the potential benefits.
I mean, we can only introduce them to that and hope they'll do that, and then we hope that there will be benefits.
If you're someone who's gone to work all their lives, you retire, you know, you might go out with your bike, you might do some mechanics. If you're a woman, you might sew, you might sew if you're a man. But then suddenly I come along and say, well, why don't you come along to one of our groups? And if you're somebody like me, I'm not a groupie person, I've never been to that kind of thing, that's just not for everybody.
No,
and that makes things even more
and
difficult.
they think that we're thinking that we just invite them to a group and everything's solved.
Yes.
It's not that simplistic. Is it?
Di also explains that guide dogs not only help socially and mobility-wise, they also make owners more approachable.
Yeah, mobility, yeah, that is the key thing. But I would also say a sort of byproduct in a way is, I think socially they do quite a bit for you as well, because people are much more willing to interact with you and talk with you if you've got a dog, because it's a point of interest, more so than if you've got a white cane, you know.
Despite that, Ben doesn't feel now is the right time for him to take on the responsibility of a guide dog.
Well, at the moment, obviously, I definitely wouldn't consider it at all when I'm in education, because it'd be obviously with all the socialisation, with the personal care, with the studying, with maybe knowing new areas as you move house as students do. Maybe not totally new area, but still different streets, different locations, year on year. And so with all those things, several things there, I think that's obviously enough of a workload, enough to manage. And so I think to look after a dog and to have that as well, I think that'd be too much stress.
Though he is unable to have a guide dog right now, he does think that he has the right attitude to be able to succeed.
Try to persevere. I mean, one of the head of sixth form told me I had a tenacious personality based on what he knew about me and what my secondary school had told the sixth form as well about my about how my GCSEs and how I'd undercome certain estimations, and so I just had that I guess attitude and personality to try and push through and see how I did.
By speaking to Ben, it's clear that there are challenges presented within society that sighted people don't have to experience in day-to-day life. This often produces an ignorance on the issues that surround people who are visually impaired, such as their lack of mobility and reliance on other people. Sadly, we see that those who have a disability often suffer from severe loneliness. Yet it's not all doom and gloom, as social opportunities are out there and are being created by groups such as the Lincoln and Lindsay Blind Society and Social Pause. Despite life being hard, there is an attitude of determination and perseverance to overcome the cards life has dealt you.